Okay, so welcome everybody. I know everybody's so busy during this time of year. There's people that told me they wanted to be on it but couldn't because of the holidays, so I totally understand. We'll be sending replays for people that want. Mary Klimek, owner, director of Skinny Seattle, and we are on a mission to help people naturally figure out what's going on with their hormones and help them heal from the inside out. This is about being so much more than being skinny, right? Your friends, your family, your grandkids, your partner, they don't want to see you skinny necessarily when you're older. They want to make sure that you can go from sitting to standing. They want to make sure you can keep your groceries and go grocery shopping and carry your groceries in from your car when you're older. So we're on a mission to help you not just be skinny, even though our name is Skinny Seattle. We're on a mission to help you heal from the inside out and help with your hormones, help with your metabolism so you can feel your best. Now, if you have questions or anything like that, like I said, feel free to unmute your mic. You can drop them in the comments. There's a little conversation square in the bottom right that'll bring up the chat. So you can chat in there. Happy holidays to you too, Kimberly. And so you're not alone here, right? We work with hundreds of patients in Seattle area and across Washington that have tried everything. You've tried the diet, you've tried the exercise, you might be taking supplements and vitamins, yet you're still feeling stuck. And sometimes maybe it's even you're not trying and you know the culprits. You're just challenged with cravings and that willpower, and it's really, really hard to overcome. And it's not just a willpower thing. You still are feeling stuck. Your body is weight loss resistant. We'll talk about all those reasons why it could be. Hi, Sandy. Good to see you. And have to interrupt because Sandy's joining us literally from the hospital surgery. So I'm glad to see you recovered. Anyway, so this is about understanding why your body is resisting change and how we can fix it from the inside out. So if you guys have a pen and paper, we're going to be going over some symptoms. We're going to be solving some problems. Write things down where you feel like you can relate. Okay, so this is not about just calories in, calories out. Okay, this is about your body's chemistry, how your proteins, your macros, your micros are breaking down. I remember this was in like the early 2000s, dating myself here, but in college, there was a college class where the professor was actually trying to teach us, this was like a nutrition class, saying that calories are all equal. So he was saying that, 1,000 calories of Skittles is going to impact your body the same as, 1,000 calories of lean protein or veggies. That's what they were teaching us. That's what we were learning back then. And that is completely untrue. I think even at that point I was questioning it, but now science is caught up with that understanding that calories are not equal. You can't eat, for some of those programs that have calorie counting or point counting, it's not just about staying under points. You're going to be undernourished. You're going to feel not as good as you could and still have those cravings. Also, as we get older, inevitable here, our hormones start to change. We start to not produce as many sex hormones as we used to. That impacts how you feel, your mood, your metabolism. For women, we're going through perimenopause in our early 40s, maybe late 40s. Menopause officially starts for most of us around the early 50s, and then we're done by our mid 50s, and then we're kind of stuck with this. Our bodies, we don't recognize our bodies anymore. So what worked in your 20s and 30s probably isn't going to work in your midlife and older. And you cannot out diet, out exercise a hormonal imbalance. It's just going to make you more tired, more hungry, more frustrated, and more irritable. So what exactly is a hormonal imbalance and how are we going to solve for those problems? Okay, we've got some key hormones. And so drop a number in the chat if you guys have heard of any of these and which ones you've heard of. Hormones or insulin. Your thyroid is actually an organ, but it produces a bunch of hormones. Your GI tract and cortisol and your adrenal glands. We'll be talking about each one of them, and each one of them plays a major role in your metabolism and how you're able to lose weight. And like I said, even more than just losing weight, have vitality and feeling good. Okay, so really quick review or overview. Insulin is going to help us regulate our blood sugar and impact how we store fat, where and how we store fat on our body. Cortisol is a stress hormone, okay? It's produced by your adrenal glands. So cortisol dysregulation is going to make us feel like we're stuck in that fight or flight or survival mode. Your thyroid is actually an organ right in your throat, and that is a really, really, really powerful indicator of how fast your metabolism is going. In your GI tract, right, your gut signaling is going to impact a lot of different body functions and metabolic functions in your body. So if you're constantly feeling bloated or you're on a omeprazole or an antacid or something like that, usually what that's an indicator is that it's going to impact your hormonal balance because your hormones are controlled by your gut, okay, part of the control system, right? So let's talk about each one of them here. So we might have heard of insulin resistance, okay? And if you've heard of insulin resistance, and it's in the same category as insulin resistance, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, right? So big picture, hormones control every single function in your body. Your eye cells have a different hormone function than your stomach cells. That's why you don't see out of your stomach and eat with your eyes. Okay, so I like to think of your hormones as like a key to unlock the metabolic door, unlock your metabolism. You have a whole bunch of metabolic processes that happen simultaneously throughout your body, right? And you need the hormone to bind to the cell, open the key, and get the metabolic process working. Sometimes what happens is we are just missing that hormone. We're missing the key, so the door stays stuck. And sometimes what happens is we actually have the key, but your red blood cells, your cells are resistant. There's gum in the lock, so the door doesn't open. So this is the case if you are insulin resistant. Now, I'm just curious, has anybody heard of insulin resistance? Is this something that people are talking about, we're more aware of? I think over the last 10 years or so, thank you, Kim. We have heard more about it because we can have continuous glucose monitors giving us real-time indication of what our blood sugar is doing. But let me break it down in very simple terms here. So you eat something, and in your GI tract, your body breaks the food you eat down into molecules. One of those molecules is something called glucose, okay? Glucose then gets broken down in your GI tract. It goes into your bloodstream. So you've got a lot of glucose floating around your blood, and we need glucose for our brain, our heart, and our lungs to work. We need glucose and oxygen. So what happens is your body senses glucose in your blood. It signals to an organ called your pancreas. Your pancreas then releases a hormone called insulin. Okay, so we've got our key. Insulin's a hormone and it's a key. And then insulin binds onto the red blood cell. And when and only when it binds to that red blood cell, it allows the glucose to go inside. That's how we have a fast metabolism. Gold star, ideally, that's what we want. Here's the challenge. Oftentimes, because of what we're eating, our red blood cells put up barricades, they put gum in the locks, and they don't want to do the work. We call that insulin resistance, okay? And when your red blood cells resist insulin binding, that means glucose doesn't get in the red blood cell, it stays in your blood, and it creates then high blood sugar. So if you guys remember having any sort of recent lab test and the provider did a fasting glucose, or even better, A1C, oftentimes it's HA1C if you're looking at your labs, it's going to give us an indication of how your body is bringing glucose to your brain, your heart, and lungs, and how fast your metabolism is. okay? And we oftentimes see when people have dietary, like they're eating a lot of processed refined sugars, a lot of processed refined carbohydrate, the standard American diet, right? Especially on the holidays, then we become insulin resistant and glucose backs up into the bloodstream. When glucose backs up into the bloodstream, two things happen to that excess glucose, and we don't like either one. The first thing that happens is that extra glucose converts to fat. It's a process called gluconeogenesis. Very energetically demanding on your body. That's why here, symptom, write this down if you feel like you get a little fatigue after you eat, especially at maybe the afternoon, 2, 3 p.m. Okay. When you get fatigue after you eat, that's a very strong sign that you've got some insulin resistance going on and that excess glucose is converting to fats. There's 4 types of fat in the body. We don't like any of them. Okay, so here's some other signs and symptoms. Jot these down if these ring a bell to you. Okay, the first type of fat is something called adipose tissue. That's going to be the fat that we can see, that we can feel, that we can touch. We don't like to have it on our body. So if you feel like you're having a lot of excess, just kind of fat hanging around, that could be a sign of insulin resistant. The second type of fat that we don't like is visceral fat. That's a scary fat around your internal organs. You can't actually see that or poke it or feel it, but if you have a body composition scale, you can test that pretty easily. You can actually get a body composition scale pretty inexpensive on Amazon. We like one called Renpho, RHENPHO. Kate, actually, maybe you can drop that name of that brand or put a link in the chat for us. Thanks. It's under 20 bucks. Put it on your Christmas list if you want, or buy it for yourself, because it's going to give you a breakdown of body fat percent and visceral fat. Okay, we don't like, though, to have a lot of visceral fat because it makes your internal organs work harder. The third type of fat we don't like is something called triglycerides. Now, this is a lab marker. And it's probably, if you're looking at your lab markers, it's probably going to be right around your cholesterol panel, okay? Triglycerides are essentially fat in the blood. So if you have high triglycerides, it's going to be a sign of slow metabolism and also fat in the blood. We don't like that. You're going to then increase your risk of heart attack, stroke, cardiovascular disease. And again, this is about so much more than losing weight and being skinny. Your family members and you and your loved ones, your kids, your grandkids, they care way more about you not having a heart attack than the number you are on the scale. So if you have high triglycerides, it's a big sign that you're insulin resistant. We want to get that number down. The fourth type of fat we don't like when that excess glucose converts is something called cholesterol. And we see this pretty commonly, okay? Fortunately, pretty standard lab testing is cholesterol. So if you have high total cholesterol or a high LDL, basically that means there's some fat accumulation along the walls of the arteries and the veins, okay, your arteries and your veins, right? We don't want to have fat along the arteries and veins because that essentially means there's probably going to be more increase in blood pressure, right? So it's like the trifecta of metabolic disease: high triglycerides, high cholesterol, prediabetes, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, okay? So high cholesterol is going to increase potentially your blood pressure, and then it also increases your risk of stroke, heart attack, things we don't want anybody to have, okay? And like symptomatically, insulin resistance, you're going to get, like I said, the fatigue. A lot of that is going to be after you eat a big meal. Thanks, Kate. The Renpho link for the body fat scale is in the chat if you guys want to copy that. Cravings for sweets and sugar. Now, this is kind of ironic because you would think, wait a minute, I have lots of glucose in my blood. Why would I be craving sugar? It's because the glucose isn't getting inside the red blood cell. It's hanging out and converting to fat, and your brain, your heart, and your lungs are like, hey, we need that, okay? The brain fog, that's another big one. A lot of people are thinking, okay, this is just aging, right? I'm just getting older. But the why did I walk into this room? Where did I put my car keys? That's a sign of insulin resistance. And of course, weight gain. Right? If you just feel like you're eating stuff and that weight, those numbers on the scale keep going up, probably a sign of insulin resistance. So we want to make your cells less insulin resistant, right? By the way, if you guys do look at your labs, this is a good number to write down. And your provider has in the past taken an A1C reading. 5.7 is prediabetes. That's for sure insulin resistance. 6.4 is actually type 2 diabetes. And what they wouldn't say, right, because it's technically like a warning sign, a yellow sign, instead of a red flag, like a diagnosis, type 2 diagnosis, but insulin resistance is anywhere going to be from like 5.3 to 5.7, right? So if you're in that and you're having these symptoms, we can suspect that this is probably part of the root cause and the culprit. So how do we fix this? Okay, it's going to be all about regulating blood sugar. And we can identify it, we can supplement, but if we're looking for easy, actionable steps starting tomorrow, we want to slow down that release of glucose into the blood. And we can do that by eating a very clean protein. So like beef, turkey, chicken, seafood, eggs. Try and avoid the processed protein shakes and bars and stuff like that. We're thinking like whole foods, right? One ingredient, chicken. One ingredient, turkey, right? One ingredient. What's another one? Seafood, right? Fish, salmon. Good proteins. And then healthy fats. Healthy fats are going to be, the list is small, so write it down. Coconut oil, avocado oil, and olive oil. I always forget the third one. So coconut oil, avocado oil, and olive oil. I don't know why I can't ever remember those in a order, okay? Any of the other fats that you're going to read the labels, canola oil, soybean oil, even the sunflower oil, highly processed stuff, that's not going to be a healthy fat, right? You can also get some fats with beans, lentils, or I'm sorry, those would be more of the starchy protein. So it would be actually a good protein source, but healthy fats are going to be nuts, seeds, oils, like we talked about, avocados, nut milks, nut butters, right? So seeds, right? That's an easy one. Pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds, stuff like that. The nuts, here's the thing with nuts. You want to make sure that they're dry roasted and not deep fried in an unhealthy oil. So you can look at the ingredients. It should just say dry roasted, right? Or raw. Or you can get the raw ones and roast them yourself, but try to avoid the ones that are deep fried in a canola oil. It's, better than eating a bag of potato chips, but still you're going to get the unhealthy fats there. Okay, so if we're suspecting we have insulin resistance, this is a big culprit. Kate and Sandra and I see all the time. We need to fix it, regulate blood sugar, get that number down. Cortisol is also a big one we see all the time. Cortisol imbalance is going to come from the stress response, right? Cortisol is responsible for 4 really important body functions. It's got to help you regulate your blood sugar between meals and while you're sleeping. Okay, so let's even think about that logically. You go to sleep for 6 to 8 hours at night. Your brain, your heart, and your lungs need glucose 24/7. But you don't wake up in the middle of the night to have a cheeseburger, but it's really hard to go 8 hours throughout the day without eating, right? So cortisol kicks in. Cortisol goes to knock on the door of your liver. That's why having a very healthy liver is important. We don't want non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, okay? And your muscles. Cortisol and your adrenal glands are going to talk to your muscles, and your muscles release glycogen, so does your liver. That saves the day, okay? The second really important role for cortisol is to help manage inflammation. Now, some of you may have gotten a cortisone shot before, maybe in a shoulder or a hip or a knee or something like that. It's really cortisone is synthesized cortisol to help with inflammation, but we naturally manage our inflammation with cortisol, okay? And the third role of cortisol is to help us manage stress. Now, transient stress is probably worse for a lot of us this time of year, even if it's, happy stress, holly jolly, we're still having family, we're still shopping, we're still wrapping things up for the new year. And I don't know if you guys are all from Seattle area, but it's just the weather is stressful. Coming to work and having my internet not work every day is stressful. Anyway, cortisol helps manage with your stress response. And then the fourth really important role of cortisol is to give you stable energy throughout the day. Okay. Now, signs that there might be some cortisol and adrenal imbalance. So big picture, your adrenal glands, they're on top of your kidneys, produce cortisol hormone. Remember, cortisol's like a key to unlock the door, okay? Signs that you have adrenal and cortisol imbalance are going to be that wired and tired. Wired and tired means you are waking up in the morning, dragging yourself out of bed, right? And then you're thinking, I'm going to go to bed so early tonight. Not moving around enough here. I'm going to go to bed so early tonight. And then 2, 3, or when it's time to go to bed, you're just wide awake. It's hard to fall asleep, okay? Other signs that there could be some cortisol imbalance is if you are having difficulty sleeping throughout the night. Like if you're waking up at 2, 3 in the morning and you just can't get back to sleep, that's a sign that your body's producing adrenaline, another hormone produced by your adrenal glands at that time. Okay, so that's a sign that there's some adrenal imbalance. If you are feeling like you have a lot of overwhelming anxiety or stress, cortisol and adrenal gland imbalance could be a culprit. And then a classic one here, it's midsection weight gain. So all over weight gain could signal a different problem, but if you're gaining weight and it's more around the midsection, belly fat, sorry, I'm getting a call on the other line. Kim, I don't know if Kim, you can pause that call in the CRM. Anyway, so if you're getting that midsection weight gain, then that's a sign there could be some cortisol and adrenal imbalance. Okay, so how can we fix that? It's going to be easy. Morning light. I know we don't get a whole bunch of morning light now these days in Seattle, but when you wake up, open your curtains, get whatever light you can, take some really deep breaths, okay? And, oh, thanks, Kate, recapped those cortisol functions. So deep breathing is going to help regulate that stress too. You could do something called box breathing, which is going to be, taking maybe 4 deep breaths in, hold it for 6 counts, and then exhale for 8, right? So you're actually exhaling for longer than you're inhaling. You do that for 30 seconds. That's going to help balance your cortisol. And of course, getting to the root cause, blood sugar, and then helping to regulate your adrenal glands. Okay. Now, thyroid is a big thing that we have to pay attention to. Thyroid dysfunction and secondary thyroid dysfunction is a really, really common pattern I see as a root cause for people with weight loss resistance, PCOS, insulin resistance, all of those things. Your thyroid is like your thermostat, right? It's going to keep your metabolism going. Now, think back a few minutes ago to my analogy. Hormones are like the key to unlock your metabolism. There's only one hormone in your entire body that's the skeleton master key to unlock any hormone, and it's made by, you guessed it, your thyroid. That's why we are so excited, I guess maybe is not the right word, but curious about people's thyroid health. Okay, you don't hear people talking about the gallbladder metabolism. We hear a lot about thyroid. Okay, now your thyroid is going to produce a hormone called T3. T3 is a skeleton key master key. So we want to see that you have a lot of free T3 in your body. Ways that we can improve that T3 is going to be selenium-rich foods. Okay, an example of that is going to be Brazil nuts, and also a healthy fat. And then also, and maybe more importantly than just eating selenium-rich foods, is going to be making sure you're getting a full thyroid panel. Now, routine lab work, your primary care doctor is doing nothing wrong or lackluster. They just probably are checking that very first step in your thyroid metabolic expression, the TSH, and if that checks out, they move on. There's actually 24 steps in your thyroid function. So we want to make sure that we're checking all the way to the last step, which is the free T3, free T3, free T4, right? And then your gut microbiome is so important here for a healthy metabolism. We just got done treating one patient, and she was having a lot of GI dysregulation, and it ended up being a bacterial infection in her gut. She had to go on antibiotics, which was great because it killed everything, but it killed the bad and the good. So we want to make sure that if you're feeling that bloating all the time, if you're feeling inflammation after you eat anything, if you feel that indigestion, antacid, even the brain fog, okay, those could be signs that your GI is dysregulated. And your GI helps with estrogen. Okay, and as we talked about, that gets slower and slower, and you produce less and less as we age and go through perimenopause and menopause. It also contributes and is a regulator for your thyroid in your adrenals and cortisol, right? Now, things you could do right away that are going to help with your gut are going to be chew very well and chew slowly. I have to remind myself this almost every time I eat, okay? Try not to eat standing up, for one. Make sure every meal you're sitting down, and try and chew at least, we'll say 20 to 40 times. Think of it this way. If you eat something and you chew 3 or 4 times and just put the next bite in your mouth, that's the first line of digestion, okay? How you swallow it goes into your tummy. And the more you can just liquefy that food before it goes into your tummy, the easier time your tummy is going to have to digest it. We don't want to be digesting big, huge chunks of food in our tummy. We want to be breaking all that down mechanically in our mouth with saliva. Chew slowly, chew well. It's also going to let your body catch up to your fullness, your leptin and your ghrelin. And then fermented foods are also going to help, okay? Kimchi is a good one, even pickles. Make sure you're getting sugar-free pickles. And pickles they're salty, right? So kimchi is probably going to be the best one. And another thing is probiotics. There are probiotics that are better than others. If you have something called small bacterial intestinal overgrowth, which we can actually test for, then there's going to be specific strains of bacteria you want to repopulate your GI tract with. If you are thinking it's like maybe not that bad, but you want to be on a good probiotic, I actually recommend the one at Costco. If you're a Costco member, you have to ask the pharmacist. It's in a white bottle because I think they keep it in the refrigerator section. It's called Viome, Biome. And so ask the pharmacist. It's a really good one, okay? Okay, so we went through all of the hormones and the culprits. Now, if you are having 3 or more of these symptoms, you're feeling constantly fatigued, even if you're getting 7, 8, 9 hours of sleep, maybe 6 to 8 hours of sleep, okay, that could be a sign that there's hormonal imbalance. If you're having those cravings for salt and waking up 2, 3 in the morning, could be an adrenal or cortisol imbalance. If you are having sweet cravings and waking up to go to the bathroom a few times during the night, could be a sign that there could be some blood sugar or insulin resistance, even prediabetes, type 2 diabetes. If you have weight loss resistance in general, that's typically a sign that you've got gum in the locks and your metabolism just isn't working as well as it could and should. And so diet alone is just going to make you more frustrated and make you more tired. And of course, the mood swings, okay? Food should not make you feel away. If you get hangry, if you haven't eaten, it's a sign potentially you have low blood sugar. And if you get that fatigue after you eat a big meal, that's a sign your blood sugar is potentially high. And then of course, bloating. We should be able to eat things and it doesn't make our tummy hurt every time. So if you have 3 or more of those symptoms, it's probably a sign that this is going to be way more than just willpower. What you did in the past is not going to work in the future without, different results. You're probably just going to feel really frustrated. So what do we do about it? Have a plan. All right. Having a plan, a roadmap. This is not just with your diet and exercise and your health. This could be with everything, right? Apply it to learning, apply it to savings, apply it to whatever. We need a solid plan. So step one of that plan is if we're suspecting there's hormonal imbalance, figuring out what that hormonal imbalance is. Lab testing will show us, we can send you a symptom checklist if you weren't taking notes and writing things down of what you can go on our website, skinnyseattle.com, take our 3-minute hormone quiz. All of those will help us identify which hormones in particular might be your roadblocks, okay? Once we identify the roadblocks, ideally, we're going to give your body and your system some support, right? And support can be supplements, right? We like the all natural approach, right? If you are down in vitamin D, for example, by the way, vitamin D is a really important hormone for your metabolism, we would supplement with it. If you have insulin resistance, there's supplements we can help to manage blood sugar, cortisol imbalance, adrenal dysregulation. All of those things we can give a supplement for to help bridge that gap. Okay, that's not the only thing. Supplements are like crutches, right? It's not going to do all the work. We also need to try and address the root cause, stabilize the blood sugar, and manage that stress. Okay, so we need to think of your metabolism like a burning hot campfire, right? And right now probably feels a little bit more like smoldering ash. Can't just start that campfire with big, huge logs. You have to start with kindling and paper. Okay, so how to stabilize blood sugar and manage stress, get that campfire going. You're going to have focus on protein, beef, turkey, chicken, seafood, eggs, veggies, anything but corn and potatoes. And then also we want to think about limiting fruit sugar, right? Fruit isn't necessarily going to make you fat per se. Nobody's ever gotten, become overweight by just eating a bunch of sugar or fruits rather, processed sugar certainly, but fruits. However, it would contribute to your glucose overload if you are insulin resistant. So you just don't want to eat all fruit, right? And then the healthy fats are also going to help you regulate blood sugar. And then long term, right? We want to slowly incorporate those foods for fun, cheesecake, pizza, holiday cookies, pumpkin pie, all those things, right? But in moderation and according to your body's rules. Now, I don't get to set the rules for anybody's body. If my mind or your mind could set the rules, we'd be eating cake and pizza every day of the week. But we have to listen to, love, honor, and respect our bodies. So if your body is giving you signs that you are having an inflammatory response, that your cells are blocked, there's gum in the locks, time to listen to her or him, right? Go back to the basics, proteins, veggies, healthy fats, cut out the inflammatory triggers and you'll feel better, right? So in a nutshell, that's what we have to start doing. Now I know Kate and I hear it all the time, but I socialize or I this or that, right? This is certainly, there's time and place for that, but it can't be every day. And you have to put yourself in your body and your goals first, okay? It can't just be what other people want you to do. Now, I had to put this slide in here because Patty said to me, she says all the time, how do I stop the mindless eating? All right. So we need to talk about this for just a few minutes here. Mindless eating is, we know we're not usually hungry. We are just stress eating or bored or something like that. Okay. So it's really important to break that habit. Obviously. Okay. That's the obvious. The question or the answer is, or the question is, how do we do that? Right. It's going to be a lot about pausing, recognizing the pattern, and making a plan for when it happens. A lot of people do very well with black and white rules. Create boundaries, okay? Think of your cravings as this little inner child, right? Most of us have raised kids, young kids, and they're having a temper tantrum. They want the sweets, the treats, the whatever. It's really easy to recognize what's going on to that child and say, we're not getting that. You don't get ice cream before bed. We want you to sleep good. We want you to have a good, you can't have ice cream and cake for breakfast type of thing. So recognize that this is just your inner child often talking, and just shut it down, create boundaries, right? Another good thing that we practice and recommend for patients is time restricted eating. Okay, eat within an 8 to 10 hour window, right? And so for a lot of us, that's closing the kitchen at 7 or 8 p.m. and just making a hard boundary, a hard rule for that. You have dinner, you're feeling full after dinner, you're not going to the couch and just snacking. Okay, now if that's a habit and a pattern for you, might be a little tricky to break. Another thing is just changing where you are, changing your position, right? After you're done cleaning the kitchen, after you're done eating, clean the kitchen, go brush your teeth, take a shower. Be in your bedroom instead of on the couch. Maybe instead of sitting up or you just autopilot put food in your mouth, you're laying down. You're even getting rid of those tempting foods, okay? Important though, pause, recognize those patterns, and then make a plan for when they happen so it doesn't just be on autopilot, right? Another good suggestion is asking your body what you need. If you really think about it, if you see that bag of chips on the counter, the bag of popcorn or whatever, you're getting those almost intrusive thoughts about it. Think, am I hungry enough? Would I eat broccoli right now? Would I eat some chicken, some steamed? If the answer is no, I'm not hungry enough for broccoli or chicken, it probably just means your body's not needing those things. You're just craving them because it's a habit or it's mindless eating. Okay, so really kind of think about that, pause and reflect. The other thing is cravings are really just a feeling, right? They come and go like anger, sadness, happiness, right? We're just not in a constant state of happiness, right? We just aren't in a constant state of anger. Those feelings usually last about 15 minutes. Those emotions last about 15 minutes. So if you're really craving something, set a clock for 15 minutes. You can simply very kindly tell yourself, well, maybe I'll have that in 15 minutes, but I'm going to take a walk instead. I'm going to brush my teeth. And then after 15 minutes, you still want it, then you can have it in moderation, but it's just not an automatic like go-to, okay? And then deep breathing. Deep breathing also helps, right? And so I want everybody right now, we've probably all done this, new year, new you, you're going to start on January 1st. And like this, Kay, you're smiling. You can recognize this, and I'm human too, right? It's like 2026 is going to be my year, right? And then we already are telling ourselves like, oh, that's not true because that's what I said 2025, 2024, 2023. But let's change this, okay? Instead of thinking I'm going to start January, think of how good you are going to feel end of January by making some changes and sticking to the plan. Visualize your future, right? You want to have, and it's about so much more than just numbers on the scale, right? You want to have steady energy all day. You don't want to have the guilt around the food. You want to have that control. You want to feel calm, confident. You want to feel like you're the one that's like making decisions and in charge. So make this be the actual year, but don't do the same things that you did in the past years, right? Don't just think I'm going to restrict my eating and work out a ton, because that's where you're going to get burnout, and the willpower then, especially if you have that hormonal imbalance, just isn't going to, it will turn out the same as the other years, right? So really think about your why, think about your affirmations, have those around, visualize how you want to feel, and then get a game plan and treat your body with love, honor, and respect. Identify the root cause. Okay, so hormones, what do we do next? Just to put that plan together, your hormones need direction, not restriction. The answer I'm telling you guys is not to starve yourself and work out more. It's going to lead to more burnout. It's going to lead to the same thing you've done in the past. Make a plan. Eat very nourishing foods, proteins, veggies, healthy fats. If you feel like you are needing help, and there's no shame in admitting this, a lot of our patients come to us because they're just like, I've tried everything. I want to shortcut this. Just give me a plan. Tell me exactly what to do. Figure it out for me. I mean, I could do my own taxes, but I have no desire to do that. I'm not passionate about accounting. So I love to just, pay my accountant to tell me what to do about it. Same thing kind of with us, right? You don't have to do everything on your own. Just because you can doesn't mean you need to or you should. Invest in your health, invest in that shortcut. We can chat, see if you'd be a good fit. And we do see maybe what hormones are going on wrong or where there's some roadblocks. And we will just literally hand you that game plan. Eat this. Kate and I will coach you through. We're going to give you feedback and accountability and support. So we know it's going to be super duper successful and life changing. Okay. No shame in reaching out for help. And as you know, right, holidays, by nature, Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day are in the midweek, so we've got limited spots available, but certainly we'll reach out to everybody, schedule a link. We can still talk. I've got time in my schedule before the new year to chat to see if you would be a good fit for the program and the process so we can help make 2026 the best year for you. So questions, we've got time. As much time as we need actually to answer questions. You can drop them in the chat. Kimberly just put a question in there. You can drop them in the chat or you can unmute yourself and ask a question. Feel free, right? This is going to be helpful. No silly or strange questions. Wait, Kate and I have heard them all. So first question is, there's lots of talk about the GLP-1s and what do we personally think of those? Yes, GLP-1s have entered the chat in a big way. Most of us probably maybe have tried them or we know somebody or friends or family that are on them. GLP-1s can be a miracle drug. So in a nutshell, how GLP-1s work. Remember when we said that there's gum in the locks of those red blood cells? Basically, what GLP-1s do is a few things. They slow down your digestion. So things stay in your intestines and your digestive tract a lot longer, okay? That is good because it makes you less hungry, but it's not great if you have GI dysregulation because then the food just stays there longer and then potentially ferments and causes GI dysregulation. That's why some people are having some constipation, diarrhea, things like that, okay? Now, in terms of what they actually do is if we think of our red blood cells and gum in the locks, GLP-1s kind of punch holes in that red blood cell. They don't clear up the lock, they just create new holes in there. So insulin can park, more glucose can get inside, okay? What we're finding and now that we've had a lot more people doing these drugs for a longer time, right, is people will lose weight because when you have more glucose going into your red blood cell, that's great. They're losing about 30% of their muscle mass too, right? Now, the GLP-1s are a lifelong thing. So if it's something you're considering, make sure you're thinking, okay, unless I make some big dietary and lifestyle changes, I'm going to be on them forever. Because when you get off of them, what people are finding is they regain the weight, but they're not regaining the muscle mass. So the trick then is you might be skinny, but you have decreased muscle mass. And if you regain that weight, you're not regaining the muscle mass. So you're actually just increasing your fat. And so it is certainly a consideration. Now, I talk with patients all the time if that's the right answer. And sometimes it is, right? Sometimes it is a miracle drug. Sometimes we get people that are non-responders to GLP-1s we can help. Sometimes people have horrible side effects from it, and we want to help. The struggle is it's not going to address the root cause. It's going to kind of bypass the root cause and solve a problem, but create other problems, like a lot of drugs and side effects do. Good question, though, right? But I mean, I'm open to people trying whatever works best for them, as long as they're educated and it's the right solution. And we know the long-term effects. My opinion, The body is going to heal itself if we can just get things working naturally. So natural and dietary and lifestyle changes are key to long-term success. What other questions does anybody have? Okay, so I guess I just answered all your questions. I know you guys can tell I get so excited talking about this kind of stuff. Um, if I wasn't doing this, which I love doing, Kate and I changing people's lives every day, I think I would be a teacher because I can just go on and on and on about the science behind all this and trying to explain and hopefully give some context and understanding. Now, if you guys have lab work you want us to check out and see, if you have questions about any of your numbers from the doctor that they've done, we'll send a replay. So if you are curious about any of the numbers that I talked about and you can find your most recent lab work and then replay the webinar, you can go through and maybe see where some of your cholesterol, triglyceride, A1C numbers are, T3 for thyroid, stuff like that. Okay, well, we're going to do another one of these probably in January, late January, early February. So I hope to see everyone on again, and feel free if you guys have suggestions for what you want to hear us talk about in the future, or better times that maybe make and work for everybody's schedule instead of 1 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon. We are open to it. I hope everyone has a happy, wonderful holiday and happy new year, and make 2026 your year. Thank you, Kimberly, and we'll see you guys next year.